Happy Monday. Amanda here from the Union Studio. Today we are connecting with Erin Coles. Erin is one of the founding team members of the Metropolitan Players with her husband Drew. And we're announcing a very exciting collaboration today. And here we are. And we're going to talk about wedding safety in the time of COVID, which I think is a lot of players, a lot of people's minds. I just let the Met players on to this live. Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. I've just said I think this is on a lot of players' minds as I was letting the Met players onto the live. I better look alive here. Woo!
I like that. I think we should go with it.
Oh my gosh, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
You look gorgeous as always, Erin. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So let's officially introduce you. We have Erin Coles here of the Metropolitan Players. Fun fact, Erin, Drew, and the Metropolitan Players were Stevie and my wedding band. And it was not by accident, because I had worked with you guys as a planner several times over prior to that. And there really just was no question that should we be able to swing a band, the band would be the Met Players. So it really was such a highlight of our wedding. When people talk about our wedding, they really only talk about the Met Players. You know, we had a great wedding in Saratoga, but and to that point, you're New York City based, but we work a lot together in all of New York State. I feel like you're one of my vendors that travels a lot, and I love that about you guys. So that's my introduction of the Metropolitan Players, but I would love to hear, you know, your elevator pitch in regards to the Met Players and how you would describe yourself to those that are joining in today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for having us at your wedding. It's still one of our all-time favorite days and favorite memories to perform for somebody we love so much and have had so many great experiences with. So thank you. Um, so the Metropolitan Players. So I am half of the husband and wife team behind the Metropolitan Players. My name is Erin Coles and my husband is Drew Coles. And we started the Metropolitan Players for our own wedding many, many, many years ago now. It'll be 8 years in May. It's gone by so fast. So what we did is that we were getting married actually in the capital region, which is another reason why we go up there all the time. We have strong ties to upstate New York. And so we decided to start a band because we couldn't find everything we loved. And we both had gone to school for business and performance, myself for theater with a little bit of music mixed in, and Drew for music and business. So we had really high expectations on both ends of things, on like the talent and musical side, performance side, as well as the business end and what the experience would be like for clients. And we just couldn't find somebody that was the perfect mix of both of those. We could find talented people that weren't pleasant to work with, or we could find people who were pleasant to work with that weren't up to the talent level we wanted. So we just were like, let's do this.
Right.
So we built our entire company around what we wished we could have found and what we wanted for our own wedding. That included incredible caliber of talent in our musicians, flexibility for our musicians as well. That was important for us to look at the back end, and then impeccable client experience. We really wanted to hold our clients' hands throughout the entire process. And make them feel comfortable no matter what part of the wedding they were talking about. So, you know, I'll get on the phone with clients and talk about dress appointments and all the way through to the music. You never know, but it's kind of, it's good to sort of be that friend. So that's what we based it all around. Now we've been around, like I said, for almost 8 years. We played almost 500 weddings since we've been together. We have an amazing collective of musicians. We're based out of New York City, and we're a party band. I'd consider us Oh yeah, party band, top 40, but we play literally everything. We learn requests for our clients. So we are just here to make the experience amazing.
Yeah, and that really shows through with working with you. Again, we've worked several times over, and I mean, obviously, you guys are so talented. Your musicians are so talented. Even, having you or Drew running at the helm, it takes so much to produce a wedding as an entertainer. But even in your emails, and I think that this is going to be not a good segue, but a segue into what we have to talk about, is that your emails that you exchange with clients and me are just so professional, and so your calls and the way that you deal with the pre-wedding planning is an art in itself, and it's not very common. So with
you.
that, yeah, you should feel really proud about that, because I talk to a lot of people, a lot of great people, but it definitely, especially during this time that's stressful for everybody, is it's really rare to find such a professional back and forth. And with that being said, you and I are experiencing another reschedule together.
Yeah,
We have a couple COVID reschedules, and now unfortunately we're moving on to our next one. And with that, I know that the Met Players, you have had a lot of experience in this, not only in rescheduling but also producing and hosting events during this time of COVID. So I want to thank you for agreeing to collaborate with the Union Studio on this. And I'd love to announce to everybody that our shared blog post is live. It's at theunionstudio.com. All you have to do is go to blog, and it's pinned right up there at the top. So Aaron and Drew shared some really amazing information with us that you've gleaned over the past couple months, and it's all written there in the blog, but we thought we'd hop on and kind of go over the highlights, right?
yeah, I'm excited. Thank you. That was such a fun thing to do, to collaborate with you. So thank you for asking. It was
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, it looks like that we're still going to be dealing with this in the spring and the summer, and hopefully not the fall, but I think that a lot of people will find a lot of value in this. So can we first start off by understanding maybe just a little bit of what you've been participating in, or what you've been seeing during this time, and then we'll hop into some of the blog highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say in general, I'm sure most wedding vendors have experience. We have sort of two camps of people that we've been working with. One, people who really want to reschedule. They want to do that large wedding. That's really important to them, to have all their friends and family in one place. They don't want anything less than that 200-person wedding they expected. So in those cases, we're working with our couples to reschedule. Sometimes, as we're experiencing and as others are experiencing, we're doing second or third reschedules at this point. But it's just the name of the game. If that's what people want, we want to make that happen for them. So that's one of the things that's happening. The other thing we've been doing this year is keeping weddings either on their original date or a rescheduled date that ended up needing to downsize. So we've been doing sort of the micro wedding thing, which is really new for us as a 8 to 12 piece party band.
Yeah.
But we have been making it happen for those couples who are interested in holding their weddings. Actually, I saw one of our brides on here. I'm not sure if she's still on. We just played her wedding in October, Melissa, and we downsized to a 6-piece wedding for her wedding. She had, or 6-piece band, 6-piece band for her. So they had, I'm guessing around 50 guests. I think that's sort of the max in New York you could have or can have at this time. And so that's what we've been doing with our clients for those who decide to schedule this year. So we've played, I'm going to say close to 10 of those weddings that are downsized. So we've had a lot of experience, in my opinion, at least, seeing weddings during COVID and how different couples have decided to handle the situation and deal with that. So it's been a really exciting and interesting and very different year for us.
Yeah, I'd say, and congratulations on keeping everybody who does choose to move forward, their true intentions and the the best that it possibly can be. Um, so in the blog we have about three major highlights, and the first highlight that I want to bring up is the subject of communication. And you have some really great tips on who you should be communicating to and how you should be communicating. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that tip that you have for us, and how to communicate and who to communicate to should you move forward with hosting in regards to dancing, band, entertainment, and staying safe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the first points of communication, at least I think, is to communicate with your future spouse, or your spouse if you've had a small wedding and have already gotten married and are still deciding to hold the celebration, and your family, and just get on the same page about what you want this to look like. And so our suggestion is to sort of start with your ideal pandemic situation. In an ideal world, if things were as they were right now and regulations didn't change drastically, how many people would you want? Would you want dancing? How would you want it to look? Do you want it to be outside? Do you want to keep the venue you have? Sort of like put all those pieces together, and really sort of just communicate with your family to decide what you guys feel most comfortable with. One thing that we found throughout this time is that many people have different ideas of their own comfort level and their own safety and how they feel about family and all of that. Like, people are just on different pages. It's just the nature of the beast. So that's one of the most important things to do up front, I think, is to just communicate with those people closest to you.
Right, right. Okay. And how about with your vendor team? Because we are humans too, who
Yes.
may have different thoughts and feelings on COVID as well. What are you suggesting, and how to communicate with other vendors?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm just going to use all of our couples as an example because they've all been so fantastic at this, is that just be honest about where you're at. And that can be like, we have no idea what's happening. Like, what do you guys think? Or how are you feeling? Are you still doing this? Are you open to this? Just like open the lines of communication and be totally honest. That's what we found is best. So share what you're thinking, what you're planning, what your estimate is, and then ask where your vendors are at to get their feedback, and work with them. I mean, I know you have a lot of vendors, right? Like at a wedding, you've got a florist, a photographer, a planner, music, everything, a venue. So there are a lot of people to talk to, and it's a lot of like putting that puzzle together of communicating, but that is going to be the most helpful at the end of the day. So you know exactly what vendors can do, what they're expecting, and then they're also very aware of what you're expecting. So yeah, just be open.
Yeah. And might I also add, and I know that you and I talked about this last week, but please, everyone, make sure that before you make any decision and you've signed any rescheduling contract, that you have talked to all your vendors and you do understand their availability and their policies around if they cannot participate in your new date. So I'm just planner getting that in there.
Yeah. No, do
Yeah.
this was a joint blog post. Like, share away. Yeah.
So there's one other important factor. I actually know somebody who traveled to Ohio this past weekend to attend the wedding of someone very close to her, and she said that as a guest, she felt a little uncomfortable because she didn't understand what the bride and groom's rules were. Like, they're from New York City, so they're very, masked up. I'm up here in upstate, and yes, everybody's wearing masks, but I think that the guard is down a little bit less than down there, and also in Ohio. So she really felt that like no one was on the same page who was in attendance there. So I think the third, people or group of people that need to be communicated with are the guests. So what are you seeing? What do you recommend? How do we communicate to everybody?
Yeah. Amazing question. And I mean, there are so many ways to do this. I think it starts right from the get-go when you've chosen to have a wedding and you know who's coming, to communicate with those people. Hopefully you have their email addresses, or hopefully you have a wedding website that you can direct people to, just to see sort of what your plans are, but put everything up there. If you expect that everyone needs to wear masks at all times, or if you expect that people need to get tested before they come, whatever those expectations are, make sure that you share those with your guests before they come so they're fully aware of what they're walking into. And then there are plenty of ways the day of the wedding as well to reinforce those rules and those guidelines, just to remind people. I mean, what if they didn't read your website? You still need a reminder. So we've seen some really interesting things this year. I mean, we've seen a bunch of signage, really beautiful, like designed signage by the bar or on the tables. Sometimes it's actually on the back of the menu card we've seen, where the rules are sort of outlined so that people know exactly what to expect. We as the band have also been responsible for sharing that information and being, you know, one time we were asked at the very beginning of the reception to mention what the rules were. Everyone was very polite and listened in and made sure they were diligent about it. And then we were asked throughout the night to remind guests of the rules if we noticed things were getting a little wonky. But thankfully they did not get weird, or people didn't get too close, because they had done all that work ahead of time to alert their guests of what their rules were, and then to have the signage and also have us announce it. So we didn't actually have to remind. But there are plenty of ways, you know, before, you know, during the wedding and throughout the day that you can remind exactly what to expect.
Yeah. And wedding planner tip, if you definitely want to guarantee that people are going to read signage that they have to read, put it in the bathrooms. Put them right next to the sink. They can't miss it. Everybody will have to use the bathroom at some point in time in the night.
That's a great tip.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So communication, very key. Can I ask a side unplanned question though, along with all of this?
Go for it.
What are you seeing? So I know that there are, depending on what state and what county and what area you are in, you can dance, you can't dance, you can dance next to your table. Are you seeing people dance? Do you have to change the type of music that you're playing because of this? What are you seeing, if you can tell us anything about, you know, what's happening here in regards to dancing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really funny because Drew and I have had this conversation many times, and we built the band to be a party band. So we built it to be this like awesome music that people just like want to dance to. So we've noticed that even when we're downsized, or even if we're trying to keep it low key, people really want to dance. So I think it's a mix between like the quality of the music plus the fact that these people have been in quarantine for several months and are just like excited to be out somewhere. So we've seen more often than not, regardless of whether the couple has thought the guests were going to dance, we've seen them dance. So we've sort of been more along the lines of saying, like, regardless of what you expect ahead of time, expect that people could dance, and then plan to create an environment in which that will be safe. So one of the best weddings we saw, which is actually the one that, if you guys read this post, which you should, our little joint post, the photos in there from Jennifer Larson Photography are all from a wedding that I would say was done one of the best this year in terms of COVID safety and guidelines. So what they did is they got married in this like pavilion with open sides that could be closed off, so it could be totally inside. But then they also had a heating unit in there. It was late fall, so it got chilly at night. So they had like that environment, and they did not create a dance floor. They actually asked their guests to dance throughout the space and keep their distance from people. So that was a really cool idea, because people weren't encouraged to congregate on a dance floor. Rather, they were encouraged to spread out throughout the space, which in a weird way, even though there were far less people than a typical wedding that we've played, it made it feel like the whole space was full, because when people were dancing, they were up. So, I mean, what we've done is just like, we want to keep it low key as much as we can for having a very small event, like, 20 people or something. But if people do decide to get up to dance, We just want to encourage them to do it safely, but we do want people to have a good time. That's half the battle of a wedding. You want them to
Right.
leave feeling like they had an amazing experience. So
Yeah.
I've been seeing it quite a lot.
Okay. So I inadvertently jumped to our next highlight, which was have a plan and implement it. So obviously with this, and I have the blog post up on my computer right now, so I'm taking a look at it, but you know, this couple clearly had a plan. Like there's really great, beautiful barriers around the bar for people to order. And there's, you know, the guard and everybody's wearing a mask and you can see that people are dancing separately. So that was part of their plan and they obviously implemented it very well. Are there a couple of other, I know we talked about signage and communication. Do you have any other tips that people should be putting in their plan of action and implementing?
Post as well. I printed it.
Well, I mean, I can also, you know, bring it up. We talked about obviously the dancing and such, but I see a lot of masks. Are you seeing like super cool things that people are doing with masks? It's what's happening with hand sanitizer? Is it everywhere across the room? What can you give us on that?
Thank you for leading me to the water. I needed a little extra.
It's I diverted from the plan. I threw the wrench. So.
Oh my god, no, that is okay. I know I have actually like a little highlighter here with all my. But thank you. Yeah, so we've definitely seen a lot of things like that. So at that wedding in particular, the one that shows the pictures on the blog post, they had personalized masks. They were cloth masks that were made specifically for the wedding, and they had like the wedding hashtag on them, which was really cute. So in all the photos, the guests are sort of matching, which is a cool element to add for a COVID wedding, because of course nobody expected that this would be the thing or that they'd ever have to have a wedding where their guests would be wearing masks on the dance floor. So I think that that's a really good way to remind people to be safe, but to also get some really cool uniform pictures at the end of the day. But hand sanitizer, we've seen a bunch. So a lot of the venues specifically are being really, really good about setting up stations throughout the venue, in the bathrooms. A lot of places have requirements, at least in New York State, Jersey, and Connecticut, where you have to have a sanitization station set up by entryways and exits. So like you'll see that a lot at the venues, is that they'll have little stations set up. But this couple also not only had those masks, they had little hand sanitizer sprays. I have one right with me actually, but they have little sprays that you can use, and it says like spread love, not germs. Here, it's right here. So like they put this on all of the tables, so every one of the guests had one, and then they also had little stations so that, you know, by the cake and by the bar and by some of those high touch point areas, they had these hand sanitizers. So there are definitely ways to encourage guests in a fun, sort of lighthearted way through these wedding favors to remind them to, you know, wash their hands, stay safe, and put their masks on.
Yeah, and you can find those favors pretty easily. I know that Zazzle has a lot of them. Also, my guilty pleasure website is called foryourparty.com. Just like spelled out as it would be called. And they have an entire page dedicated to sanitizing, masks, wipes, sprays, gels, soaps, all sorts of things. So it's definitely widely accessible now. I think we just need to think about 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time in order to get these items personalized.
Yeah, great tip.
What else? We talked about signage, floor plans. So we do have some spatial stuff that we need to look out for, right?
Yeah.
So about you're like, yes.
So I didn't know if you were going to expand or not.
I mean, I can. I mean, because we can't really, what's happening with these venues is that we're not losing the dance floor, but we're seeing a different configuration because the tables have to be more spread out. So when you're on the stage as a band, do you have tables not like right up close to you, but are you feeling like, oh my God, there's no dance floor right in front of me? Did that take a little adjustment?
I mean, not Not really. And honestly, people have still set the tables away. I mean, they have to be 6 feet away from us. And because
Right.
we're our vocalists, all our band does wear masks, but the vocalists don't wear masks while they're singing, only because that's not really going to make sense. Their voices are going to be muddled and you won't be able to hear what they're saying or the enunciation. So we do take those off. So given that, what we've actually found is that there still is quite a bit of space between us and the first table. So it almost feels like there's a dance floor, but like it's not as prominent in the whole room layout as it would normally be. I mean, normally it would be like there would be like a square dance floor or something, and tables would be sort of around the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're just sort of scattered throughout versus being in sort of that like around the dance floor pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't feel too weird. It's weird that we've also gotten used to the way things work this year at this point that I'm like, no, it's not, nothing's weird. But yeah, we still have quite a bit of distance. So it's just been more of like reminding guests to keep their space and go throughout the whole space rather than sort of congregating in that area in front of the band.
Right, right. Okay. So, I think we've talked about most of the plans. I think something that I always have in mind as a planner, but also is the one thing that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, did I think about this? Because I do a lot of tented events under normal circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
but heating and cooling, because we're going to see tents. Like I personally don't, but I have a planner friend who's doing a New Year's Eve wedding
Wow.
in a tent outside. Is keeping things hot or keeping things cool, and making sure that you have, if you are doing a tented event, that you are taking care of your guests' needs, temperature wise. I mean, obviously I think it would dawn on people to heat a tent on New Year's Eve, but even like maybe just a month ago, especially when you're hosting in the hills and the Catskills and the Hudson Valley, you might need heating even in August at night.
Yeah.
So that was a really great tip. Thank you. Thank you for those tips. Is there anything else? I know that we have one more highlight after this, but we covered signage, we covered communication, we covered masks. We end the blog with what I really hold near and dear, again, outside of COVID times, but you say, don't forget about what's most important. Do you want to elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, sure. This was also one of your major points, so I want you to, of course, speak on this.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what is most important is you and your spouse getting married and making this decision together, whether you're hosting the wedding or not. And that's the most important. It's just you and your relationship with that person. Nothing else really matters at the end of the day. Like, that's why you're putting this wedding together. So that it sort of bookends with that first point of just communication, which is just make sure you're on the same page. And if you're not, come to a place where you are, because we have couples who have decided to get married and are pushing their major wedding to 2022, and they're going to start a family in the meanwhile. And that was just most important to them to get married, and they'll have their party later. Right. But it's definitely important to remember, like, you're in this together, you're partners in this, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day.
Right. It's about the marriage. It's also about the wedding. Let's be real. But I think that I've really seen the strongest come through this when focused on the marriage, and how that will meld their wedding right now. Yeah. So, well, Erin, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. We had a 30-minute goal, and it's 1:29 right now.
That's amazing. I mean, we're both planners, so I'm not surprised.
Here we are. But I wanted to remind everybody where they can find you. We can find Erin in two places, right? We can find you at Met Players on Instagram.
Yep, Met Players on Instagram, themetropolitanplayers.com, and then my personal Instagram is erin.coles if you want to follow me there.
Yes. And you do a fun um, segment. I'm calling it a segment or a series
Yeah.
on Erin.Coles. You're working on a couple of cool things there. Number one is your freelancer talks. Can you tell us just like a quick bit about that
Yeah.
every Friday?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I host a series called Freelancer Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my personal Instagram. And that's just where I interview gig workers, small business owners, and freelancers about their journeys, like what brought them to where they are today, as well as how they've been navigating during COVID. So I had Amanda as a guest a couple weeks ago. I've had a few people in the wedding industry, some performers, some Broadway actors. So it's been a really, really cool experience just to hear where people are coming from right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's really important. Okay, and then we can also catch you and Drew on Met Player Mondays on on IG Live, on YouTube, on your blog,
Yep,
on
everywhere.
everywhere.
Everywhere you can find Met Players, you can find that. So yeah, we have a series called Met Player Monday, where my husband Drew and I sit down and give advice. So it's everything from how to choose your music to how to plan a wedding during this time, to literally anything else. We even did like travel stuff for COVID and how you should share that with your guests. So it's all over the place. But feel free to watch and ask us if you have questions, and we might be able to do a Met Player Monday on your topic if you have a question.
Ooh, yeah, you guys have really turned into some pretty awesome influencers in the wedding realm. And so I urge anybody who's in the industry or hosting an event in the near future to tune in. So, and then our blog post is at theunionstudio.com. It's the top blog post when you go to blog. Please check it out. You guys were instrumental in helping us provide those tips. And also thank you to our co-writer, Megan, who is tuned in here as well. So Erin, thank you so much. And I'll look forward to seeing you on IG, watching you do all of the things that you do so well. So thank you very much.
And thank you so much for having me. You are amazing. Your advice is amazing. For anyone who's watching, please go to Amanda if you need help with your wedding planning. I mean, she's incredible.
Thank you.
Of course.
Here's to many years of watching you guys from behind the scenes making people's wedding dreams come true. All right. Okay.
Buddy.
We're here in this love fest. Bye.
Thank you.